been waiting for has now finally arrived.
From knockouts to tap-outs.
It's all over!
Inside the octagon and beyond.
Is this not real now? Are we pretending?
We're rich, baby. Break out the red panties.
This is the MMA Report with John Pollock.
Unbelievable!
Here we go!
Welcome to the MMA Report. I am John Pollock. Thank you for tuning in for another week of the program. Coming up today, we're going to be joined by UFC light heavyweight Misha Cirkunov, who will be returning to action next Sunday for the UFC's return to Stockholm, Sweden at the Ericsson Globe Arena. This is a discussion you are not going to want to miss with Cirkunov because a lot has happened in his career since the last time we spoke with him, which was back in December prior to his win against Nikita Krylov at UFC 206 in Toronto. Since that time, he had the contract issues with the UFC, has a new deal, and now he gets to take on Volkan Oezdemir in a card that is going to place a big spotlight on the light heavyweight division between that fight and the main event involving Glover Teixeira and Alexander Gustafsson. All of that is coming your way. We're going to get into many different topics with Misha Cirkunov, but we are going to start off the show by going back to last Friday's UFC press conference in one of my favorite cities, Dallas. The UFC held their big summer kickoff press conference last Friday, featuring many of the key fighters that are involved in the summer's biggest fights for the promotion. None bigger than the rematch between MMA's version of J.R. Ewing and Cliff Barnes. I'm talking about Daniel Cormier and Jon "Not Ross" Jones. After last year's rematch was lost in the days leading up to UFC 200, they will attempt to stage the fight again at UFC 214 at the end of July in Anaheim. The two took little time to reacquaint with one another and share their admiration for the progressions that both have made, both personally and professionally.
So the belt that he has over there, it's an imaginary belt. I messed up outside of the octagon. I got that taken away from me. But the guy's never beaten me. In order to be the champion, you have to beat the champion. He can fight all the other light heavyweights that he wants. He can beat every light heavyweight. Until he beats me, that belt over there is it's a piece of shit.
You know what happened behind the stage? He's a bitch. He's a bitch. He's a bitch ass.
Guy that had you crying.
Hey,
who was the bitch backstage?
Hey, he's a bitch ass.
You're hugging Cain Velasquez, crying on his shoulder. I'm the bitch.
Hey, he's a bitch, and he said something about my kids, so I smacked him in the face with a water bottle.
Yes, much like the show Dallas, this press conference would focus a lot around family members and crossing that sacred line in the defense of innocent fight promotion. So, as explained by Cormier, family is off limits, drug use, open season.
Are you back, junkie?
I'm back. I'm back. This junkie had you crying.
You're a knob.
Junkie whooped your ass, Daniel Cormier.
You're a junkie. Get out of here.
Am I back? There's 11 weeks. Yeah, I'm back.
You got 2 more months before you're actually back.
Yeah, exactly. And you better love these next 2 months, Daniel, which I'm sure you do.
In addition to providing MMAJunkie.com with a year's worth of promotional material, it also provided Jon Jones with his own rebuttal.
You better love these next 2 months, Daniel, which I'm sure you do. Make Christmas cards.
I'm good.
Make Christmas cards.
I'm good.
Make Christmas cards now because the belt's going to be gone, Daniel.
A lot of this press conference would focus on Jon Jones and his affinity for The Rock. And it was pretty clear during this press conference he was definitely under the influence of The Rock.
The countdown is on. 10 days from now. Tick tock. Tick tock. Tick tock.
Also very appropriate that Jones used the analogy of the Christmas card, because the last time these two fought was just 1 week after Christmas in January of 2015. And as Jones somewhat shockingly revealed, it was snowing pretty damn hard on Christmas that year.
I beat you after a weekend of cocaine. Back-to-back weekends. Cocaine one, your ass the next. It was great. That's a month for the ages.
1 second, I'm just replying to a text message that Nike sent me. Yes, Jones really said that in a public setting. Sure, still appropriate for redemption story down the road. But Cormier and Jones weren't going to command the entire spotlight that day. Michael Johnson saw his opening and got his verbal weapons out in full force for recent signing Justin Gaethje.
I'm a violent motherfucker. I'm the most violent lightweight on this planet, and I will prove that.
No, you're
going to find out.
The most violent
you're going to find out.
Trust me.
It's going to be a march to deep water, baby, and you ain't not going to last. You cannot swim in this water.
Deep water? I don't need to swim. I do all my fighting on land, player.
Yeah. Water. We fight on land. A slogan even Ryzen may have turned down, but tensions were rising between these two. Johnson seemed to be in command, was letting his words flow, but don't ever accuse Johnson of verbal diarrhea.
It's not going to be a good night for him, hands down. I got 2 months to get prepared to take somebody's life in this cage. I'm not trying to beat him. I'm not trying to win by a decision or a point. I'm literally going to try to take this man's life. And if you're not,
want to die.
And if you're not ready, you're not ready to die, don't show up.
I am ready to die.
I'm telling you right now, the shit that's running through my mind,
breaking
you're in a
piece by
bad
piece,
night, boy.
artistically breaking you.
I eat my shit whole. I don't fucking take piece by piece.
Now, it takes some real improvisational skills to have an exchange of words that includes Justin Gaethje yelling, quote, "Yes, I want to die," as only the second best line of that exchange behind, "I eat my shit whole, not piece by piece." Definitely an off-the-menu item and one of the great sound bites in MMA history, which I pray is a euphemism because Lyoto Machida didn't even go that far for preparation. Staying in the lightweight division, we move on to Michael Chiesa and Kevin Lee. Two men that wanted their own attention, and unlike Michael Johnson, neither was going to take any shit, whole or in pieces.
I mean, aside from that, he just looks like some dork that got kicked out of Woodstock. I don't know why he's disrespecting my mullet. The champion of the world is sitting in front of me. She's got a mullet, so...
I'm going to carry him through this card. He's going to headline because of me. After that, he's going back to the prelims. But I just hope he shows up because I know his mama got tickets. Mama got tickets. Mama got tickets. Mama got tickets. Mama got tickets.
Ooh. So Michael Chiesa has a split second to react to the introduction of his mother to the conversation. He has a multiple choice question. Should I respond with a similar insult? Should I blow the comment off entirely? Or option C.
Shut the fuck up about, hey, don't talk about my mom for one. Don't you ever talk about my mom. Don't you ever talk about my fucking mom. Don't you ever talk about my fucking mom.
Mama, dad,
I want to get in the middle.
Like whatever you want to call it.
I'm going to smack the fuck out of you right now. Don't you ever talk about my mom.
Yeah. What's good?
Option C it was. And can I just say that it wasn't Kevin Lee punching Michael Chiesa or Michael Johnson hoping for manslaughter in July. It was an even public disclosure of a coke-fueled weekend that stunned me during this press conference. No, that went to Valentina Shevchenko getting into the action with the most underrated line and most chilling line of this press conference.
I say you have 2 months more to speak, and it will be done.
That is frightening. All the best, Amanda. I mean, this press conference had everything. References to mothers.
Steroids.
Fecal matter.
Snorting cocaine.
Are we forgetting anything else?
Prostitutes.
We'll be back right after this with Cody Saftic.
Dana, we know you're a Celtics fan and all that, but let's get straight to the facts. Yeah. Okay, you know I'm a fan. I've been here since day one.
Yeah.
Yo, Romero, all those guys.
Came to all your games.
Yes, I know you did. So, McGregor and Mayweather, is it happening? Is it a myth? What's going on? Please let us know right now.
The McGregor side is done. I'm starting to work on the Mayweather side now.
Ooh. So the fight will happen.
Ooh. I'm not saying the fight will happen, but I got one side done. Now it's time to work on the other. You know, if we can come to a deal with Heyman and Mayweather, the fight's going to happen.
All right, and what you just heard there was Dana White on TNT on Wednesday night, following the Cavaliers' destruction of his Boston Celtics, chatting with Shaquille O'Neal, amongst others, about the Conor McGregor Floyd Mayweather fight, the fight that Cody is not as hot on. But we've got one side done. I don't know what that means, Cody, but one side is done.
Yeah. It seems like whenever they talk about this big mega fight too, they bring in just astronomical guests too, like Michael Rappaport or Charles Barkley, or I believe Nelly actually put his 2 cents in it as well. So everybody's in the same boat. Is the fight going to happen? Maybe, maybe not, but it's just dominating headlines similar to the way the Cavs dominated the Boston Celtics.
Oh, very nice, Cody. I mean, that's pretty much all you can say at this point is this is the latest development in the story. And if what you can take as being accurate, that's still a big hurdle in securing everything on the Floyd side. I mean, if you look at this as just a straight negotiation, if you have Conor's side locked in, do you foresee this being a difficult negotiation with Floyd's side, given that, I mean, they have gone out publicly calling for this fight, that if they can guarantee the right money, is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, it almost seems like it's a 3-way split. But let's say, just for random numbers and figures here, that the fight was going to generate $200 million in purse money for both guys. Then the logic would dictate that it'd be $100 million each, right? And Floyd, we've already know that he doesn't want a 50-50 split. But if you were to offer him $100 million, I'd find it shocking that he'd turn it down. The issue now is that McGregor needs to split at 50-50 with the UFC. So his split becomes $50 million. At which point, let's say it's not $200 million, they're not going to drag Floyd down on it. So if McGregor's willing to accept half and half with the UFC, which is still going to get him the biggest payday of his career, but he just seems a little tad bit greedy. Maybe it's, he wants all the gold for himself, so to speak, and he'll go after that. So if the UFC offers a 50-50 split, and I've heard figures being 60-40 perhaps in the UFC's favor, which I find, would be a little bit of a head scratcher, but there's just so many hurdles about what date are we going to now do it on, because we lost our original date. What venue are we going to do it on? Are we going to try to fill up a stadium, or are we just going to go to the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas?
And if you're Dana's side, I mean, Dana's not this independent arbitrator in all of this. He is the promoter of one half of this fight. That is Dana going into this negotiation on behalf of the UFC to try and retain specific promotional rights to this. I mean, I'm sure the UFC wants to make a play that they are going to promote this in concert with Mayweather Promotions. And Floyd's team, what incentive do they have to co-promote? I mean, that could be a very difficult negotiation right there if Dana's going in there with that mindset of co-promotion. Maybe he's not. Maybe he realizes that's just a pipe dream.
You know what? I thought co-promotion was right out of the question, because UFC traditionally does not co-promote, and I just cannot see
But do you at least
them
not try and play that card to try and fight for that?
Yeah, now I think there's a certain possibility that the UFC just tries to make a full spectacle out of this and says, you know what, we'll do it similar to the Bellator Dynamite events, where we might even set up a cage and a ring. But if we're not going to do MMA fights, then that's fine. Apparently Jimmy Manuel has been approached about a fight with David Haye, that would be a boxing match. I know both Diaz brothers have been approached with boxing matches in the past. I don't doubt that to a certain extent they do something like that, where they do a couple 6-rounders, a couple 8-rounders, have some UFC fighters against some up-and-coming boxers, or just try to make a full spectacle out of it. Where I thought that was a ludicrous idea, I now can at least open up that it's a certain possibility. Do I think it's a great possibility? No. I think that more or less they're going to do the one big, just like every other boxing pay-per-view, it's the one big fight, which will be Mayweather versus McGregor. You're buying it for the one sole purpose, and they'll have Orlando Solis in the co-main event, and only half the people will watch it. Does not matter. Less than half the people will watch it. Does not matter. I think that would be the route for them. The UFC just does not co-promote. Now that they have new owners, I can see them being open to it, but why have this one big freak show event and then never come back to it every event? You're jumping the shark at that point. There's no coming back.
Let's go back to last Friday. Earlier in the show, we went through some of the highlights of the Dallas press conference. What did you make of this spectacle? Because that's all you can really categorize it. Do you like these big blockbuster press conferences they do, and what they are designed to achieve, which is interest in fights, which I don't think you can knock the press conference for not achieving last Friday for several of the fights?
Yeah, I think for Kevin Lee and Michael Chiesa especially, I mean, that just infinitely brought up the attention on this fight.
That was a throwaway fight night card, and now there's a ton of interest in that
and not
fight.
only is there a lot of interest in that fight, but I see a lot of the other lightweight contenders being like James Vick or whoever it may be. They're just like, if someone drops out, I'm in. I'll take that spot. I want in on that, because there's a lot of attention towards it. They've been able to bring in the spotlight. Traditionally, I do not like those press conferences, because you just put a bunch of fighters on stage. Half of them don't get any questions, but they've been dominated over the years by Conor McGregor. He shows up, he acts a fool, he puts on a whole spectacle, and people really like ticket. So they've had some good traction. So now it's like, okay, well, without Conor McGregor, is it still going to be fun, or is it going to go to the same thing? Everyone's got a tie, and I really respect my opponent, but, you know, I'm chasing my dreams. But to just see guys come out there and show off a little bit of personality, I think it drew a lot of interest. And I had a lot of people contact me and be like, oh my God, did you see this press conference? Like, yeah, I saw it, but you probably didn't see it, but you saw highlights. And then that drew your attention to watching the whole thing, which is pretty fairly entertaining for the most part. So I thought it worked. I thought it worked pretty good. And there's certain things you just don't know how it's going to do. Like the UFC is doing this retreat, getting all their fighters coming down to Vegas. I don't know what the purpose is of that. But if you have everybody in one spot at one time, why not take advantage? Why not do something? And yeah, I enjoyed it myself.
Yeah, I think that's all you can view these as. I mean, if you're a purist of the sport that hates all of this stuff, these aren't for you. It's a press conference. It is there, and the sole goal is to raise interest to the public of their fights. That's it.
Yeah,
and you're going to do that verbally. That's what a press conference is designed to do. And it just seemed like everyone up there, when you have all of these different spectrums of fighters from all different walks of life, they're all trying to one up each other. And in a weird way, the two guys that were doing the I respect my opponent thing was Chris Weidman and Kelvin Gastelum, who it was almost like charming that these were the contrast to everybody else and the chaos that surrounded these two, that it kind of worked for those two.
Yeah. Actually, Nunes versus Shevchenko, there's another good one. Love the exchange.
Like when Valentina Shevchenko is throwing out shade, I mean, that's when you know the bar is just being raised. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. I will say, though, while people might have been entertained by the line, I can't imagine what Jon Jones' team, how they reacted to the cocaine line.
Yeah.
For a guy that has been in this perpetual state of rehabbing his image to the point of having a crisis management expert with him at UFC 200 last summer during that whole debacle, when you've lost sponsors and you're trying to win them back, and now you have recorded like a public comment bragging about your cocaine use. If you're any kind of a blue chip sponsor, how are you ever looking at this guy when that's out there? It's like, I don't know. It's with Jon Jones, it's the same. I'm a different person. I'm changed. It's like, it's just a tired act to me. It's just go out there. I hope this guy fights well. I don't have the biggest worry about his personal life as others do. But I don't want to just hear the same redemption story with this guy, because it doesn't come across as genuine to me at all.
No, but he himself is being genuine now more than ever. I mean, when he initially got popped, he was, what was he saying? This is my first time, or, oh, I don't know how it got in my system. And now at least he's going...
His words just don't ring true with me.
Yeah, but he's gone full heel now, John. At first he was trying to be a babyface. At first he was trying to be on the pound for pound great, and I'm trying to have this good image. But reality is that this is who he is. And yeah, you don't worry about his personal life. He was a world champion with all these problems in his life. So if anything, you take these away from him, and who knows if he'll ever be the same. I don't want to make the direct comparison here between Jon Jones and Tiger Woods, but in many ways, Tiger Woods, greatest golfer of all time. He's killing everybody. He has personal issues. His life outside of golfing seems chaotic. Now, he does the same thing, gets a crisis management expert to come in and say, this is going to be your statement and this is how we're going to go about it. And all of a sudden, he takes away all those outside distractions and he gets back to being good Tiger Woods, who's good for Nike and he's good for the sport of golf. And you know what happened? His career tanked. Now, why is that? He's more focused now than ever. But this is how these guys operate.
Maybe Nike was the issue in all of this.
They're operating at such a high... Yeah, you know what? Nike just knows how to choose them for the most part. They love to sponsor the greatest athletes of all time. And for the most part, the greatest athletes of all time are human beings, and they have demons in the closet like every other human being. You know the amount of pressure it would be to be Jon Jones, to be considered not only the greatest American fighter of all time, but perhaps the greatest pound for pound mixed martial artist of all time, a guy that's realistically considered the only great undefeated fighter of all time. That's got to be a lot of pressure. And this guy just had so much stardom come at a young age, youngest UFC champion of all time, that his life became in turmoil. And I think he beats Daniel Cormier all day. But you take away his outside extracurricular activities, and maybe he's not the same guy anymore. And maybe, I was talking with Gabe Morency about this actually. Jon Jones has got an addictive personality. Whenever he chooses to do something, he does it to his full extent. If he wants to be an MMA fighter, he'll be the best MMA fighter ever. If he wants to be a coke addict, he's going to be the best coke addict ever. When he decided to be a power lifter, John, the guy was all of a sudden squatting 600 pounds in a short time frame. The guy has an addictive personality, and he pursues the things that he likes to his fullest ability and his fullest potential. And if it's a bad habit, unfortunately, that's what happened. But we've seen with great champions in the past, the Mike Tysons of the world, that this does happen, and Jon Jones is not excluded.
But I think we can all at least listen. There are going to be people that make mistakes in life, okay? And this is a giant public figure who his mistakes are going to be in a much bigger spotlight than anyone else's. But this is a guy that he has horrible, horrible judgment. Like some of the worst I've ever seen in this sport. Fleeing a scene, whether it was a guy at his gym that offers him a pill that cost him UFC 200, and just uttering a line like this in response. I mean, not thinking of the ramifications of being a major figure, and you all of a sudden just throw out that, yeah, I had a coke-fueled weekend before I beat you. And it's just, my sympathy only goes so far, is what I'm saying. He has awful, awful judgment, and I think that's just magnified.
Yeah, but you know what? I'm sure he never signed up to be a role model. I mean, I think when you get to the highest levels of any sport, there's just some expectation that you're going to be a great person and a great human being, and you're going to give back and you're going to do charity work. But in his case, it's just not who he is. Although this fight is drawing up attention because it's a classic baby face versus a heel. Daniel Cormier, even though people boo him at the press conference and whatever this is, he's funny, he's likable, he's jovial, and I think a lot of fans are on his side. But 50% of the fans hate the guy, and they like Jon Jones, the reckless bad boy. But regardless, you've got both people bringing in audience, and it'll sell. I know they're saying it's not going to be a main event, which I do find shocking.
Do you think it'll be bigger than the first fight?
Yeah, of course. The money's in the rematch. Always is. Always has been. And it'll be big. This is not a blowout the first time. It was a fairly close fight, and Jon Jones was able to dig deep. But now you give him personal adversity, and that changes everything. How's the guy going to rebound from that? I know you said you hate this redemption thing, but this is America, baby. Not in our case, we're in Canada. But people love a redemption story. That's what people sign up for. And the only thing that sells a fight more than a championship title is a personal interest story. And that's what this has. Because both guys legitimately don't like each other. And that comes across well in interviews when they're both bickering back and forth. And, John, really? You're going to kill me, John? I'm going to let that happen? That's a soundbite that just lives in MMA infamy and always will be. And people rally behind this kind of stuff. So I'm a firm believer that this will be a bigger fight. The only issue is I can't 100% legitimately sit here, look at you in the eye and tell you this fight is going to happen, because it could get canceled. We've seen it before, and it could quite possibly happen again. We just don't know. So I don't want to get too excited for it.
And I think that given all of this, and in a weird way, the Ovince St. Preux fight, I think actually makes this look like more of a competitive fight than the first one. I mean, the first one going in, I think people could argue back and forth. The outcome was certainly very much on the side of Jon Jones, but this rematch, I think this is a winnable fight for Daniel Cormier. I don't think I'll go so far as to pick him in the fight, but I have questions about Jon Jones. I think everyone has questions about Jon Jones.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Misha Cirkunov was in the office recently, and he actually brought up a great point. He said, well, it seems like Jon Jones is a bit on the decline, and people will all point to the OSP fight, but let's just go beyond that. What were the best performances of his career? People will look back to that Gustafsson fight. People will look back to when he had to dig deep, but that was a long time ago. These are his best performances of his career, are technically speaking
We're coming up on 4 years since the Gustafsson fight.
Exactly. And then you look at all that wear and tear. When he was going into that fight, John, he was a big favorite, and a lot of people were saying, well, you know what? He's never been in a war. So he goes out on record and he says, I want that war. I want that guy that can push me. I want to be tested to my limits. And you know what he gets? He gets exactly that. But he gets a couple follow-up fights where it's the exact same thing. Yeah, he goes out and he butchers a couple guys in easy fashion, but he's been getting hit a little bit more lately. Maybe he hasn't been as focused lately. But there's no doubt that if we're talking about Jon Jones being the best fighter of all time, would you say that he's in his prime right now, which he should be because of his age, or was he in his prime a couple years ago? It's actually looking like his prime was a couple years ago. Whereas Daniel Cormier, we know the age he's at, but there's no denying that this guy's a competitor. The way he fights allows him to have longevity, a lot like Dan Henderson and Randy Couture. I think that style lends itself to older fighters, and I think that he's got as good as a shot as anybody to beat Jon Jones. If there is somebody currently at 205 pounds that can beat Jon Jones, I would say it's Daniel Cormier. And for that reason, when we live in a world of, people fighting, looking for money fights and people fighting guys that aren't the number one contender, at least you can realistically look at this and say, this is the number 1 and 2 guys fighting in the world right now. And that in itself is pretty exciting.
Going to UFC 211, I put together the real winners and losers, Cody. So you agree or disagree with me? Starting off with the winners, I have Stipe Miocic and Joanna Jędrzejczyk as two of the biggest winners. I think both had solid title defenses. With Stipe Miocic, I think it's incredible to look at this murderer's row he's run through, and there's one guy left for him to me, and it's Cain Velasquez. And I know he's not ready to fight imminently, but I think Miocic probably wants a bit of a break here, and that to me is the fight to make at heavyweight.
Yeah, it's the fight to make at heavyweight. The issue here, if you're Stipe Miocic, is that there's no excitement outside of that one fight. Because now, realistically, I've blown out Alistair Overeem, I've blown out Fabricio Verdum, and now I've blown out Junior Dos Santos. There's zero interest in me fighting any of those three guys currently at the moment. Guys like Travis Brown, they're out of it. Mark Hunt, I killed him. So if Mark Hunt beats Derek Lewis, and there's a great chance he does, then that's off the table. So Francis Ngannou's a guy that still needs to work his way up, maybe a couple more. Yeah. The UFC would be crazy if they did Ngannou versus Cain Velasquez, which is a fight that has been talked about, because that's killing off your two legitimate contenders at this point. So I think very much so, let Ngannou get a couple fights on the sideline, build some more interest. Ngannou versus Miocic, assuming he wins the fights that you're going to build him up in, that's the fight to make. For the time being, Cain Velasquez, the issue here now is that Cain Velasquez is not in fight shape, and I don't know realistically when he is going to be. I don't want to say tune-up fight, because realistically, UFC 200 was one of his best fights in a long time. He looked fantastic. But by all accounts, he's 300 pounds right now. He's not in the gym as regularly as he should be. He's got a bad string of injuries. He's just not motivated. If he gets back in the gym and he takes care of all those things, he's returning to the best heavyweight currently in the UFC. So it's going to be a tough task for him. But if you're the UFC, you don't really have any other options. That's the fights that you realistically have to put together. So I agree with you. Miocic versus Cain Velasquez, that would be the last test in proving Miocic as one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, if he isn't already considered one of the greatest heavyweights of all time. But I would hate to say that we're not getting the best version of Cain. And if you talk to Javier Mendez or you talk to any of the guys at AKA, they'll tell you at this point in his career, he needs a full camp. And as you and I both know, Cain getting through a full camp is just an issue in itself. So I don't know that fight is actually made next, although realistically, it would be the best fight to make.
Yeah, and with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, I think similar that we're looking at one, maybe two more fights at 115, and then that'll be her swan song at strawweight, and then looks ahead to flyweight, because outside of Rose Namajunas, I mean, she's cleaned out that division at this point, and I think it's all in how she views this Ronda title defense record that is all of a sudden something of, to me, this record was never brought up until someone realized it last week, and now it's this coveted record to go after. I don't know if she's going to necessarily base the next year of her life around this record, but she's committed to at least fighting throughout this year at 115, and to me, Namajunas would be the choice.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page again. I think Rose is the excellent choice, pretty much the best choice anyways. You put that fight together, and that would probably be her last fight at 115 pounds. Otherwise, she's blown out the division, and you've got a season of The Ultimate Fighter coming in where they're going to crown the 125-pound champ. So if I'm Joanna Jędrzejczyk, similar to the Conor McGregor position, is that I'm the best, in McGregor's case, I'm the best 145er in the world, but it's rough making the weight. And you see McGregor on the scale, and you think that's miserable, and he's a champion, and he wants to live the champion lifestyle. He's got some money. He can fight as effectively at 155 pounds, then why not go that route? You look at Joanna, and she comes in with the towel to make 115 pounds for her last fight, and she looked drawn out, and she just looked tired. But she makes it to the fight, and none of that's actually a factor. So even though it doesn't affect her, I could very much seeing somebody come out of the tough house as the new 125-pound champ. Joanna presumably would be able to beat that 125-pound fighter. I mean, Vanessa Porto, like, who realistically comes out as the champ? I don't know. But all I'm saying is that she's got as good as a shot as any as being a dual champion here. And then I think if you ask most people who's a better women's fighter, who's the greatest women's fighter of all time in MMA, not Rousey, it's Joanna Jędrzejczyk. And I don't even really see an argument for Rousey. So even though she might not get all the title defenses, I think that's a dubious record. And she'll do great things as a double champion who pursued world titles in two different weight classes. And I wouldn't rule out a move to 115, but she's 29 years old now. I could see this being the stage of her career where she moves up, just like so many fighters do.
Another winner from Saturday, I thought a big winner was James Vick. 7-1 now in the UFC's lightweight division, which that's an incredible mark at 155 pounds and criminally underrated at 155 pounds. I mean, this was, Marco Polo Reyes, not a world beater at 155.
He's 7-1 at 155.
I would say James Vick had a more effective performance after the fight than during the fight, because it was his interview time with Joe Rogan that stamped his, had he just done the usual speech, I don't think anyone's talking about him on Monday morning. And that's kind of sad that you can have a performance like that and be forgotten. But on these 12 fight cards that go 7 hours, yeah, fights get forgotten if you don't leave some kind of impression. And James Vick made sure he did. And throwing his name into the backup plan for Chiesa and Kevin Lee. I thought very smart to utilize all of his time out there.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. James Vick actually makes regular appearances on like podcasts and does predictions and all that. And he's very, very entertaining guy, a very well-spoken guy, and a guy that I think people would want to hear more from. The issue is that how many people are listening to James Vick podcasts in their free time? Very little, at least not in that public eye. So you get, perhaps, you just fought hard, presumably for 15 minutes. In his case, he gets the first round finish. But no matter who you are, you put in the full training camp. You go through all of this. You get that win. You get that microphone in for you for 45 seconds. You got to take advantage. You got to do something. And in his case, I think he's one of the guys that comes out now where people look at it as 7-1 in the UFC, a guy that did fairly well in tough, only losses to Beneil Dariush, improves better and better every single time.
He's been James Victory.
Yeah, the Texecutioner in his own backyard of Texas. Get these fans fired up. Get people talking about you. Insert your name into talks. And listen, if Chiesa or Kevin Lee does get hurt, don't be surprised if James Vick is the guy that gets that immediate call. So I think he set himself up for a good potential fight down the road. And listen, Polo Reyes, if anything, is just a tough, durable guy. And to go out there and take a guy like that out in the first round, it still does say something for you. So I'd agree, James Vick, big winner on the night.
And I'll say both winners in their fight were Chase Sherman and Rashad Coulter, who significantly upped their stock with that fight.
Up their stock very similar in the way that Polo Reyes had upped his stock when he took on Dun Yun Kim, the Maestro, at 155 pounds. Is that I don't see either of these guys being a factor in the division at all, and this is the thinnest division inside the UFC. If you're Chase Sherman, this is a guy that you're taking on Coulter, who took the fight on 2 weeks' notice, is 35 years old, had never beaten an opponent currently with a winning record, and came from a pro boxing background where he fought under Orlando Coulter and was 3-0. The game plan was go out there and kick him in the leg, and that's exactly what he did. Fun fight, entertaining fight. Truthfully, Sherman got robbed of $50,000 because he should have got a double bonus for sure. How is that not fight of the night and knockout of the night? Should have got the double bonus, poor guy. But realistically, he's 1-2 in the UFC now. And even though he's young and he's getting better, I don't know how much he's getting better. And Coulter's 35. He'll get one more fight left in him and then he'll get released.
Cody, wet blanket here on the fight of the night from Saturday.
I'm telling you what, man, the world's not just rosy and peach color. Well, not everybody's a big winner on the night.
No, maybe that's why. I love the disagreement. Now let's go to my list of the losers coming out of Saturday night. And this one, maybe you're not going to agree with me because he technically was a winner, but in my book, actually came out of it less. Damian Maia. I thought this was I was intrigued by this fight and I loved watching this fight, but coming out of it, I sense no anticipation for Tyron Woodley and Damian Maia. I think he's at best in the same position as he was before the Masvidal fight. And I just have this feeling that this guy's going to get screwed again and not get this title fight.
Well, the fact that Dana White was sitting cage side and alluded to the fact that, like, okay, yeah, we're going to give it to you. We're going to give it to you. I think that they do go with it. But if George St. Pierre isn't fighting Michael Bisping,
it's like the worst thing you want is Dana telling you one thing.
Yeah, that's the curse. That's the curse. That's like him giving you a kiss on the cheek and you know you're going to get taken out that night. Oh, no.
We're not in the Misha Cirkunov business any longer.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. But if Damian Maia...
Did Damian Maia come out ahead in your book?
Yeah, because I had him... I thought he was going to lose the fight, and even though it was a close fight, people were saying, well, you know, half the striking. I did have him winning the fight. He went for the takedowns when he needed the takedowns. He got the takedowns when he did. And when he got Jorge Masvidal's back, that first round, if that's 4 minutes of domination, and I know what people are saying, well, not much damage landed, and it wasn't like any of the chokes were close, but that's still dominating a guy. That's as good as having a guy in side control and holding him down for 4 minutes. Yeah, Masvidal lands a couple shots. That's got to be a Masvidal, or that's got to be a Maia round. Second round, yeah, I think Masvidal keeps the fight standing. He boxes him up. He lands the better shots. He's kicking his leg. He's stuffing the takedowns. This third round's a gut check performance here. This is who wants it more. And it seems like nobody wants it more than George Masvidal, but he's always been passive aggressive, and he got pretty passive in that third round, gave up the takedown. There's just this aura with Damian Maia. Every time the talk is, well, will he be able to get this guy down continuously? And he does every single time. So even though he won and it wasn't spectacular fashion, I gotta think the guy's stock rose because this was a real big, I know people look at Condit. Condit had one foot at the door. He's talking about retirement. He hadn't fought in a while. And he even says himself, I'm a shot fighter. I'm not what I used to be. That's why he's never going to fight again and is not fighting currently. Condit can go out there and admit that. Matt Brown's a guy with a terrible record who gave him trouble in the third round. Gunnar Nelson chose to use his ego and try to out-grapple Damian Maia and backfired on him. Everybody there seemingly had a shot to beat Damian Maia if they just had the proper game plan. I really thought Masvidal would have the proper game plan. But in 3 rounds, I've never seen George Masvidal that tired in my life. He went 5 hard rounds with Benson Henderson in Korea, and his cardio seemingly looked great. And this is not a testament to him not being in good shape. This is a testament of, you want to talk about wet blanket, the ultimate wet blanket, Damian Maia. Once he gets on you, he zaps the energy straight out of your body, and that's what he did. So I do think he's a winner in this situation.
Okay, another loser I had, even though he was victorious, David Branch.
Yeah,
This fight was universally panned with Krzysztof Jotko.
You know what, though? I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of people like Krzysztof Jotko. This is a guy that people were very, very high on.
This guy was all risk, zero reward for a David Branch coming in. I mean, this Krzysztof Jotko is the most unassuming 19-1 fighter that you are going to see. I think even your hardcore fans recognize this guy's name, but I don't think anyone can tell you. I don't think he gets any appreciation. So this was all a very risky fight for David Branch, but I just think in the chaos that is the middleweight division to come in, I mean, he became a wallflower real quick in this division to me with this win. Like, I don't see him, like, he didn't stand out at all here.
Yeah, see, this is the only reason I'm going to disagree with on that, is that that's just his style. And I think if he does that, he's being effective. If you look at him in the World Series of Fighting, his last number of fights, Lewis Taylor, Vinny Magalesh, Clifford Starks, seemingly not the highest level. Now, yeah, he beat Yushin Okami as well in the mix. He beat Jesse Taylor. He does have a couple good wins in the mix. But predominantly is that he'll smother you. George St. Pierre is not the most entertaining guy in the world, but he's effective. And Dave Branch is effective. Krzysztof Jotko is a top 10 middleweight. Krzysztof Jotko is someone that, coming off the win over Talis Latis, his stock was ultra high, and Talis Latis couldn't neutralize him at all. Talis Latis is very similar to a Dave Branch. You know, he's working on his striking every day. He's got a fairly good chin, decent gas tank. He wants to get you on the ground. He wants to out-grapple you. To see Jotko defend so easily against a guy like Talis Latis and then get smothered by a guy like Dave Branch, and Jotko's a legitimate contender in the division, I think that speaks volumes for a guy like Dave Branch. It wasn't a very entertaining fight. I know what you're saying. You got to take the spotlight. You're on a big pay-per-view. A lot of people are tuning in to see this. Take the spotlight and run with it. Was it an entertaining fight? Not particularly. However, dominating a guy like Krzysztof Jotko, and I do use the term dominating lightly because it wasn't like he thoroughly just thrashed him the entire time, but getting that win, you got to look at the fact that Dave Branch, since getting cut from the UFC, he was 2-2 in the UFC, which wasn't a bad record, and it wasn't like he lost 2 in a row, but since getting cut, he's something like 14-1. His only loss, he went the distance with Anthony Johnson at near 205 pounds. The guy's a stud. He's a little bit older, but he's a stud. He's a Renzo Gracie guy. This is just his style. I know it's not pretty, but it's effective, and he got the win. I want to hear who the rest of your losers are, because I already know who the biggest loser on the entire night is.
Oh, we're getting there.
I'm building to
the biggest loser here. By the way, I really like how you kind of have leveled out the fight of the night and also brought up the worst fight of the night, too, in your assessment.
Did you think that Branch that with Jotko was the worst fight of the night?
Yes.
Was it because you got overtreated on the prelims and all of a sudden the main card starts and it's just not up to expectation?
Probably.
I think that's a big
probably
part
had something to do with it. Those prelims were incredible.
Incredible. And so it's hard to be all of a sudden, grappler versus guy that's going to be counter grappler up against the cage for 3 rounds. It gives it a bad rep, but I think Dave Branch has still got a couple good performances left in him.
Okay. I think we're in agreement. Our biggest loser of the night, Junior Dos Santos.
I'm going to disagree, but he is a pretty big loser on the night.
Who's your biggest loser?
Jessica Aguilar is the biggest loser of the night. This is a girl that was considered the 115-pound undisputed best in the world. She comes to the UFC, tough fight with Claudia. She wasn't the worst fight in the world, but she gets beat up. She takes 2 years off. This is the last hurrah. She's 35 years old. She did a full camp at ATT where she's considered a team captain with Joanna Jędrzejczyk, with a plethora of high-level fighters. She comes in here with, I'm going to go ahead and say, next to Koji Oishi versus Nick Diaz, the worst game plan in UFC history. It felt like Ryan Hall versus Gray Maynard, but Gray Maynard was actually having higher fight IQ during those moments. She literally sat over Casey while she just got booted with up kicks repeatedly in the face. The surgically repaired knee of hers and the body had no answer, did not attempt to change it whatsoever, literally just accepted getting outstruck by a female who's on her back. that was just crazy to me, man. I still can't get over it. It wasn't like I was particularly highly invested in Jessica Aguilar, but what a head scratcher that was. That has got to be the biggest loser on the night, because Junior can still come back from this. He'll still get some fights. He'll still get some money. Jessica Aguilar, first fight in 2 years, she's done. That was it. It was over.
Fair comment. I like how we have opposite biggest losers of the night. With Junior Dos Santos, I just look at him as someone that the best case scenario is the fact that he is fighting at heavyweight, where he's 33. I don't believe he'll fight for a world title ever again after that performance. I really think that this guy cannot walk through the strikes he once could. And what troubled me even more so before the finish was just how open he was to Stipe's strikes. I mean, this was a guy that, listen, I will sing the praises of his boxing. His defense was non-existent in that first round leading up. He was getting hit a lot by Stipe. And this was the fight that, if I were to map this fight out to favor Junior Dos Santos, staying standing with Stipe would have been my preferred method if I'm Junior Dos Santos, and it turned out not to be. So I don't know. With Junior Dos Santos, I just feel he's in a weird sense of purgatory, but heavyweight, as we just outlined, there's not a plethora of contenders. A new champion can obviously change things, but to me, if Stipe is losing anyone, it's Cain Velasquez, and that doesn't bode any new life for Junior Dos Santos in that division either.
No, yeah, it seems like the way to beat, just like you said, if Junior was going to win, he had to keep the fight standing, and then keeping the fight standing was the worst case scenario. So you look at the other contenders in the UFC, and their best case scenario now is not keep the fight standing. You want to take it to the ground with this guy, and he's just so hard to take down, at least consistently. At least Cain is that interesting storyline. If you're Junior, this is a heartbreaker. I didn't think he looked all that bad prior to the knockout. He's landing the leg kick. He seemed to be somewhat effective.
The leg kick was definitely effective.
He had
that fight gotten to round 2 or 3, it's probably a different fight. I mean, as much as Stipe downplayed that afterwards. But by the way, my favorite moment of the week was on one of the embedded shows where Stipe is going to throw out the opening pitch for the Texas Rangers game. And one of the media people or PR people is showing him how to hold a ball. And he's explaining, he's like, yeah, I used to play. I'm like, yeah, he played like really high level baseball. Yeah, and it was the best.
He was like an outstanding high school athlete, majored in like a bunch of different
Seriously,
sports.
Like if you look, this guy is one of the best athletes the UFC has had. And you look at him and he never gets that praise. I mean, from, Golden Gloves boxing, playing baseball at the level he did.
Yeah.
Wrestling.
I think he played lacrosse. He played a bunch of sports and it's time consuming. You know what I mean? You're playing all these different sports. You're trying to focus your attention all over the place. This is a guy to me that even while he was making that run to become UFC champion, he's still working part-time as a firefighter. He's just a great human being, a great athlete, a great all-around guy. And this is the hardest title to hold on to in the UFC. I mean, it's the heavyweight crown. One punch ends it all, but he's basically taking out challengers. He's looking good. He's entertaining. It seemed like Embedded was mostly surrounded around Stipe because you can stick a camera in front of this guy and he's entertaining. I don't doubt that if they're going to continue with this model of the Ultimate Fighter, that you don't see a Cain Velasquez versus Stipe Miocic season of the Ultimate Fighter where you can put a camera in front of Stipe, allow him to let that personality shine through, and also then give Cain Velasquez enough time to get a proper training camp in, because you're going to have to shoot the whole season.
I don't think that guy would even take 6 weeks off to go film the Ultimate Fighter.
Is he that point in his career, eh?
He's the ultimate firefighter.
Yeah, well, you know what? Who knows? I mean, he's living life well. I'll admit, when he got on the scale, and this is a guy that you see him at the Cavalier games, you see him out and about, you see him doing public appearances, you see him having a great time. He's almost like a kid stuck in a man's body, and what a hell of a man's body it is, because he's a great fighter. But when he got on the scale, he looked in phenomenal shape. I mean, heavyweights don't have abs, at least not naturally, and this guy's someone who I would consider to be a natural fighter. I think he's in the peak of his career. Heavyweights generally peak around 34 to say 36. And that's exactly what he is 34 years old. And I think that even Junior is 33, 1 year less than him. Junior's shop worn. Junior's at that point now where I could see him competing for a title one more time. I know you said never again. I could see one last kick in the can, because this is heavyweight. But Stipe's in the prime of his career right now, and Junior's definitely on the way down. That game plan could have worked out if it would have went 5. And in his mind, the last time they fought, it did go 5, and he took the best shots. But you know what the clear indication here is that couple years ago, you could take his best shots, and now you can't take his best shots, and that's a reality that sets in for a lot of guys, and that should be the reality that sets in for Junior. Although I don't think he retires, I think he fights on. If we didn't know that the warning signs were there following the Overeem loss and the third Cain Velasquez fight, I should say, the warning signs are certainly there now.
Bellator 179 is happening Friday afternoon. It's going to be airing on a several-hour tape delay on Spike here in North America. We've got Rory McDonald's Bellator debut taking on Paul Daly. This card unfortunately lost Michael Venom Page. He was set to fight Derek Anderson, but you also have Liam McGeary fighting Linton Vassell on this card, as well as Kimbo Slice Jr., Czech Congo, who just turned 41 this past week.
42, isn't it? Is it 41 or 42?
I think it was 41, but nonetheless, he's north of 40. So there, Junior Dos Santos, maybe he's going to have a whole revival in him.
In Bellator. Yeah, I'll tell you what. Czech Congo has actually only lost, I think he's something like 5-1 in his last 6, and the losses to King Mo by split decision. Prior to that, the losses to Minikov, who's I think one of the best heavyweights currently in the world.
42
years
Congo.
Old. Listen, he comes from a French Muay Thai background. He's known as a guy with deadly striking, but credit to him, he does not take damage anymore. He knows what he's in there to do, and that is out-muscle you up against the cage, get a couple.
We could just call him the Bellator. I mean, this guy's won 4 straight at heavyweight. He might as well be the Bellator heavyweight champion.
Yeah, well, the undisputed, the uncrowned. He had lost to Minikov, and by the way, nobody steals a round from Minikov. I thought he might have won one of those rounds against Minikov, but the fact that he seems to be fairly durable in Bellator, he has a good record in Bellator, and when you see him beat guys like Tony Johnson Jr., those are the top 5 and top 5 guys in Bellator, and he's still beating them. So even at 42, he seems effective. Augusto Sakai's technically undefeated, but I think Czech Congo could go there and get the win. McGeary, I think, is in for a tough time. And I do like this card. It sucks that it lost a good fight in Anderson versus Michael Venom Page, but I still do like it. And if they put the Kimbo Slice fight on the Kimbo Slice Jr. fight, I should say, why am I even calling him Kimbo? What does he go by? Is he Baby Slice? Baby Slice. Okay, if Baby Slice is on the main card and I think they're throwing up another swing bout, it'll still be a good, entertaining offering.
Liam McGeary and Linton Vassell, do you feel maybe more so for McGeary? Is there the rematch? Phil Davis is going to fight Ryan Bader next month. Is this going to I really don't feel Liam McGeary matches up well with whoever's light heavyweight champion after June the 24th, but that could be at stake here for at least McGeary, if not Vassell as well, because it's unknown how long Muhammad Lawal is going to be out of action, where they're looking for their next contender at 205 pounds.
Yeah, I think Vassell's in it as much as anybody. So he's actually a year younger than Liam McGeary, who clocks in at 34 years old. And I think when we think about Liam McGeary, we think about someone who, bursts out of nowhere, essentially, a little bit older when he got into MMA, and he runs up this undefeated pro record. But it's really important to note that the first signs of that maybe he's not some great undefeated champion is the Kelly Anunson fight, where he gets taken down, but he throws up like an inverted triangle choke while he's in side control. Cool little move. The following fight from that was Emmanuel Newton, where he got thoroughly controlled in the grappling exchanges, taken down repeatedly, out-grappled, and I really thought he robbed Emmanuel Newton. I thought, you know what? This shouldn't have gone his way, but they give him the win. The following fight was the Tito Ortiz fight, where once again, he ends up on his back, but he throws up that triangle. It's when you see him run into Phil Davis, a guy that you're going to get taken down, and guess what? He gets taken down, but you can't just throw up a triangle and choke out a superior grappler. Linton Vassell is a good grappler. You look at his fights with Emmanuel Newton, and he's very, very strong, he's very athletic, he's very aggressive, he'll get the takedown. Once he gets the takedown, he secures it on you. His last fight against Francis Carmel is a fairly big guy, a good grappler, well-trained, and I thought he completely dominated him over the course of 3. Yes, Carmel's a natural 85er that was taking that fight at 205. But nonetheless, Linton Vassell's had good spots. The last time he lost was against King Mo, as you talked about. And if Mo's out of the spotlight right now, why can't this guy make that move? It's also important to note that he's moved full-time over to what was the Black Zillions. And now that he's been training there, they've disbanded, and now it's Henry Hoof's gym. He's still there with them as well. So I know that he's tried to excel that level of training partners, and just having guys like Gilbert Burns, for example, to help him with his jiu-jitsu will help out. So I see this fight, especially because it's only a 3-rounder. You look at McGeary took a tune-up fight in his last fight because a number of opponents fell through. But even then, he was always supposed to take up a tune-up fight. And I didn't think he looked great. His striking looked okay, but if he gets taken down here against Vassell, and I do expect him to get taken down, then they call Vassell to swarm, and I expect him to swarm on him. Hold him down, out-grapple him, secure the win. The 3 favorites on the card, the 3 big favorites, are obviously Rory McDonald, Liam McGeary, and then in the opener. So I just honestly feel like if one of the dogs are going to come through, it's going to be Linton Vassell. I think he's got the style to do it, and I think that a lot of people might be surprised.
Diego Lima defeated Haider Hassan this week on The Ultimate Fighter. Just an addition.
That was their last shot again to win, I think.
Dude, this could be just a clean sweep, because I can't possibly see Julian Lane coming out ahead of Ramsey Nijem next week.
I can't possibly.
There are definitely fighters that can beat Ramsey Nijem on this show. I don't see Julian Lane as one of them.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's his option here? Just you allow the guy to bang? I think Ramsey Nijem takes
Maybe Cody's going to be gone after a few weeks. I mean, his team's going to be all just gone. It's just going to be Team Dillashaw fighters.
What it might come down to, and I really hope this isn't the case, but it might come down to Joe Stevenson. If Joe Stevenson doesn't get the win and then Garbran's got the one guy. Do you remember when it was Rashad versus Rampage and all he had was that Marcus Jones and Rampage did? And it was just like, I don't care that you've won literally every single fight. I got my one guy, big baby Marcus Jones, who's way too emotional.
What a cool story if it was Joe Stevenson that puts the team on his back. Like the guy that, I mean, man, that's season 2 winner. That's season crazy.
At 170 pounds, nonetheless.
Yeah. I mean, this particular week of The Ultimate Fighter, it just kind of felt, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to talk about in this fight other than they really played up this teammate deal between the two. I mean, one's in Florida, one's in Atlanta. Yeah, it's teammates in name, but this isn't, I mean, people were making comparisons like to Team Alpha Male being forced to fight one another. This was a bit of a different circumstance to me.
Yeah, this would be more like we're acquaintances. No doubt that they've trained together in the training room, but it's something like, oh, the Lima brothers are in town for a couple of weeks and they're coming by the gym, and then all of a sudden you don't see them for 3 months. This is not like, yo, this is my best friend, this is my roommate, this is a guy that I spar every single day. It's nothing like that. I remember couple seasons ago was it wasn't Corey Anderson, was Khalil Roundtree versus his training partner, Corey Hendricks.
Right, at Syndicate.
And it's like, yeah, those guys hang out at Syndicate. Those guys train together every day at Syndicate, but you put it aside, you go out there and you do what you have to do. In this case, we have a similar affiliation, but that would very much be like, I can't fight that guy. It's like, why can't you? So Fabio Holanda, brown belt. I'm going to affiliate with Fabio Holanda. It's like, man, everybody has affiliation with them. Just because you're affiliated doesn't mean you can't go out there and take care of business. So I think they're overplaying it. But here's the thing that I've really noticed is that if you take rookies and you take guys who just are dying for that spotlight and guys that are inexperienced and guys that are still young in their lives and young in their careers, you put them in a house, maybe you'll be entertaining. But you put a bunch of seasoned veterans here who are here for the purpose of redemption. They're here for the purpose of not messing around with their careers, and they know that this is their last shot. If you expected Jesse Taylor to come out here and be a drunk and no, man, he realizes this is his last shot. So everyone takes it seriously. Everyone's respective. Everyone's not looking at you and being like, you never fought nobody. It's like, yeah, you're a 25 veteran. You know, everybody's fought somebody in this house. So there's a big respect factor, and that just dulls out the entertainment side of it. But the fights have been good.
All right, last thing here. Love it or hate it? Just give me your impression here. CM Punk on The Challenge.
Love it. Love it, love it.
You're a viewer.
Yeah, for sure.
And he's on, this is a 6-week season?
Yeah, it's a short season, which I only realized this week, but they're only going to do 6 episodes in the season. Okay. And I think they're going to do like double eliminations every week to just try to like go through it. So if he's getting matched up, here's the issue. I thought when it started that he'd be playing reality TV people. Turns out he's playing other pro athletes. So he might get destroyed by like Sean Merriman or like one of the big NFL linebackers that are on the show. However, it's a game of like brawn and brain, and I think he's a pretty smart guy, and he seems to be like physically in great shape as well, so I love it. Hopefully he wins the whole thing.
Okay, we'll go rapid fire here. Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier being ruled a no contest.
Hate it.
Rematch between the two.
Love it.
I do too. Blake Lively to star in MMA film Bruised from the same director who brought us The Notebook, which is an underrated movie.
This is a two-parter. Love Blake Lively, hate this idea.
Oh, I thought you were going to throw shade on The Notebook, man. Like, don't knock The Notebook.
The Notebook is legendary.
Notebook's a good movie.
I'll tell you something, man. It's like Walk to Remember. If you crap on it, there's a lot of backfire coming your way, man.
Cain Velasquez receives the next heavyweight title fight.
He should, so love it. But, I mean, does he deserve it? Not likely, but who else does?
Tyron Woodley versus Damian Maia.
Love it.
And Chase Sherman versus Rashad Coulter. I think I know where you're going with this. Sherman versus Coulter is the leading contender for fight of the year as of today.
Yeah, love it.
All right, you are going to sign off on that.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
When you think about it, like this year, there's been good fights, but we haven't had a plethora of like fight of the year contenders this year. It's a small list.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you think
could get it with McDonald and Daly this Friday, to be honest.
Yeah, well, that one could really go one of two ways. We have some spectacular knockouts this year, but when you're looking at a fight of the year, it has to be both ways. It has to be back and forth. It can't just be a one-sided blowout. And when you're looking at this Coulter fight, it looks like he's getting beaten and then just landing almost at will, seemingly. Good fight. But you know how like Bellator's got this like Bellator NASCAR event thing where they're going to put like 3 local fighters at a NASCAR event.
Yes.
That's the level Sherman Coulter was at. But boy, oh boy, was it fun to watch, John.
Hey, they love their bowling shoe ugly fights. Last one, love or hate Dana White's new Contender Series that's going to be debuting July 11th every Tuesday night on Fight Pass.
Love it more than I could ever love a newborn child. I love this idea. I think this is fantastic. I think it works in so many different angles. If you just want to bring in your Dana White looking for a fight, those guys, great. But if you want to bring in Joe Riggs and guys like that and let them fight at it, love it. Tuesday night, it's a dead night. You're just going to put a couple fights on Fight Pass, drawing people to Fight Pass, drawing people to names that they remember, and more MMA. And I love it. I couldn't even describe how much I love this idea.
Could find the next Chase Sherman.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is that when you see really low-level fights, it's like, 8-2 versus 6-1. Like even that Devin Powell guy that came out of Maine, right? No good. But what people got to realize is he was the best guy out of Maine. He was the best lightweight that was in Maine. So let the guys that are the best out of wherever they're from fight, and if they can earn their way to the UFC, they can fight their way to the UFC. Instead, they just get stuck in obscurity and they fight a couple times and they pan out. There's no opportunities. I think it's a good idea. And if one of these guys who's, 8-1, 9-1, a guy that's a king of the cage veteran wants to jump up and he wants to prove he's ready for the big show, then let him fight Randy Nijim. Let him fight Jesse Taylor. Let him fight Joe Stevenson. Let him fight one of those guys that we recognize that we'll tune in to see fight and let the young guy try to build him up. If you win, you get over. It's great. If you lose, well, back to the packing order and the old grizzly dog gets the win and everybody's happy, I think that there's a lot of good angles they can use with this. I think it's a fantastic idea. You have, when everyone says, pink slip match, whoever loses this fight's gone. Literally brand the fight, pink slip match. That'll tune in people because people are going to be like, one of these guys is about to get cut from the UFC. And let your Justin Edwards fight there. Let your Diego Limas fight there. And if you lose there, you're gone. And if you win one, either you stay for another pink slip or you come back to the full roster. I know it sounds carnival. I know it sounds WWE. But if everyone's complaining, I want the fighters to get paid more money, then the business has to make more money. And this is the kind of ideas that could make the business more money, which would lead to better fighter paydays, better opportunities, and then everybody's happy. So let's just do it. Let's go with it.
And this was always the original idea Dana White had when they purchased the company and were trying to get television. Tuesday Night Fights was the model that the UFC wanted to be their television presence. Then the Ultimate Fighter concept was developed and they went that way, which was the right idea in 2005. But this was always the goal. And now they've got kind of their Tuesday Night Fights. That wraps it up for us. You can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. We are coming back. We're going to hear from Misha Cirkunov, who was in studio earlier this week to chat about his upcoming fight in Sweden. But first, we are going to hear this clip of one Sage Northcutt cleaning up some of the trash talk in mixed martial arts, courtesy of the Champions website.
Hey, I'm Super Sage Northcutt. I feel like a lot of UFC fighters get a little out of hand with trash talk, so I'm here to make it a little more PG. So today, welcome to Sage Advice.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
All right, what he could have said is, no offense, but this information doesn't come as a surprise to me, sir.
This is number one bullshit.
If somebody was keeping a list of unfairness, I feel like this would rank among the top.
I'll go out on an all-night f***ing bender and still beat you, pal. I won't even train.
What he could have said is, Mr. St. Pierre, though I greatly respect your accomplishments inside the cage, I feel like I could defeat you even if I forgot to train for a day. Which, come on, let's be honest. I never forget to train.
Who the f*** is that guy?
Excuse me, sir? I didn't catch your name. Mine's Sage Northcutt. See? It's really not that hard. I hope I opened a lot of hearts and minds today. Train hard and stay positive.
We're back. That was a very entertaining video that the champions.co website put out earlier this week with Sage Northcutt, one of the truly great joys in mixed martial arts. All right. Now we're going to go and transition over to my interview with Misha Cirkunov from earlier this week. The UFC light heavyweight will be in action a week from this Sunday. It's a very rare Sunday afternoon card from Stockholm, Sweden. If you remember, the last time that they were in Sweden was the Fox card involving Alexander Gustafsson, and Anthony Johnson. And it aired in prime time in the U.S., and therefore they were fighting in the wee hours of Sunday morning. super early in Stockholm. This time around, they have customized the start time for the Swedish audience. So it's going to be starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time with the main card, which is headlined by Alexander Gustafsson and Glover Teixeira. And then second from the top is Volkan Oezdemir, who debuted earlier this year, beating Ovince St. Preux by split decision, taking on Misha Cirkunov. Chatted with Misha for quite a while, and we went long earlier. So we're going to break this up into two parts. This section of the interview with Misha deals with the current light heavyweight division, his impressions of Jon Jones, and his actions at the press conference last Friday, and getting into the head of Misha Cirkunov, who is one of the rising light heavyweights in the UFC and the world at the moment. So here it is. We will break this up over this week and next week, but here's part one with Misha Cirkunov.
As we look ahead to Volkan Oezdemir, it's coming up Sunday, May the 28th. This is a fight for you that I think some people were surprised at the opponent initially. What did you make of Volkan Oezdemir? He comes into the UFC and he gets a very close decision victory over Ovince St. Preux and was rewarded very highly in the rankings for this victory. Was this a surprise that this was the opponent that they had ready for you?
Yeah, I was surprised, but at the same time, kind of like, not really surprised, because at the end of the day, OSP is a very, very, very tough individual. Mm-hmm. And if you can put up a performance like Volkan did, OSP is a ranked fighter, and then you beat a ranked fighter, and then you're a young guy, talented and fast, and Volkan is a heavy hitter himself as well. It is what it is, and they, put him in high rankings, and good for him. But now, having said that, he's a target now, because he's a high-ranked guy. So there will be some guys that are gonna go for that spot, So I'm just excited to be in this position, and every single fight is tough, So just excited to put up a great performance and come out victorious.
What's the process like for you and your team? You signed the contract to fight Volkan, and then what's the first step? Is it just relay and get all the tape possible? I mean, what are kind of those first initial steps in preparing for an opponent that you and your team put together as the plan?
Well, with my team, I have a couple of guys that are good fighters themselves, and we all kind of train together. We don't have such a thing, or it's like, oh, he's a coach and you only have to listen to him and whatever he says, that's how it is. We kind of have mutual respect between all the fighters ourselves, and then we listen to each other. And then one guy, is a little bit better with Muay Thai, another guy's a little bit better with boxing, another guy's a little bit better with the ground. So we always sit together when we eat or after training or whatever, and we talk to each other and we give different ideas to each other, different scenarios, different advices, and we all kind of try to get better together. We don't have just like one person who's just like, oh, he said that means it's that. Mm-hmm. We kind of throw different scenarios. Oh, this can happen, that can happen, and we all try to kind of figure out, what's a suitable game plan or what's the right approach.
Is that something that you sense a lot, that there's a lot of black and white that people put out there, when realistically it's a lot of gray area? You don't know, you can't just define a fighter by X, Y, and Z, because he might come out very differently. That seems to be the philosophy amongst you and your team.
I don't just prepare for one thing, like, for example, yes, I'm fighting Volkan, but hey, like, what if he gets injured, and all of a sudden I have to fight somebody else, and I've been training for that person. And then, I've been training for that person, and I'm fighting someone else with completely different skills. So then all of a sudden, all that training is kind of like not really suitable for this guy. And then, so I just try to get better as a fighter. I don't really concentrate on, I don't really concentrate 100% on my opponent. I concentrate 100% on myself, and I just try to get better as a fighter. I try to be amazing with submissions. I try to be amazing with knockouts, with my hands, with my feet, with everything. I just try to be a better fighter. And then closer to the fight, seeing who I'm fighting, I kind of see what his aces are, what he's really, really good at, and I just try to stay away from his aces, and I try to throw my aces at him. And it's a fight. Anything can happen, you know. I'm doing good today. Tomorrow it might be not the case. So I'm kind of expecting anything go my way. That's why I train very, very hard. And I believe in hard work. That's all I believe in.
They've also announced for July 29th the rematch between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones. And last week it was also stated they were going to put Jimmy Manuwa on that card as well, almost in this backup in case there's a problem with the main event. And I think that puts a big spotlight on the 2 light heavyweight fights that are happening in Sweden. I mean, not looking past May 28th, but is that a turnaround that would be possible if there was a reward for it going to
100%. You know, it's a fight business. It's a fight game. One day nobody really talks about you. Nobody really kind of knows you or whatever. Next day you're fighting in a big spotlight and you get your hand raised. Next thing you know, everyone talks about you like they always knew about you. You know. Meanwhile, before that, they didn't really do so, or maybe if they did, they've been talking you down slowly, you know, to the general public. So. I don't know. I don't really care about all those things. I just concentrate on working on myself and getting better. And like I said, I believe in hard work. And then after May 28th, whatever happens, you know, I come victorious. I have no injuries. You know, I'll be good to go. You know.
When you hear Jon Jones at last week's press conference, and he's talking to Daniel Cormier about how I did cocaine for an entire weekend, and then I came back and beat you. Do you feel that, given his stature in this sport, do you think that's a damaging comment when you hear that, or do you feel that's Jon Jones? That's his honesty. You can take it or leave it.
It's a little bit of both. At the end of the day, he kind of paves his own future, paves his own destiny, all that, you know. But for example, as a fan, you know, as a coach. I don't know. I think it's kind of a little bit crazy, you know, doing cocaine and then going to fight and then talking publicly about all that. I mean, my friend Kevin Gastelum got popped with a little THC in his system, and they took a bunch of cash, a bunch of money from him.
He lost a major fight.
But he lost, you know, now it's not a contest fight, you know. So I don't understand how that works. You get popped for something that apparently it's going to go viral, illegal everywhere. So it's the same thing as alcohol. It's actually less damaging than alcohol. And they take a win from him, like a really, really serious big win against the Hall of Famer. And on the other side, we have a guy that publicly talking and kind of almost hyping up cocaine, which is a hell of a drug, killed a lot of people.
Yep.
And he's not getting stripped from his wins, from winning on that weekend. And I don't know. I think it's a little bit crazy, you know. But again, it is what it is. He pays his own future. I don't understand how those kind of like two things can, you know, one guy gets popped and everything taken away from him from something, in my opinion, not really big of a deal compared to the other side where it's a hell of a drug and nothing is taken away from him. Meanwhile, he's making like 100 times more of everything. I don't know. I think it's crazy.
Yeah, it's to me it's a comment that you look at it and it's just he's in a position where whether he wants to be or not, a lot of people are influenced by Jon Jones that are fans of the sport, that are younger fans of the sport. And I hear a comment like that and I just think that it's just damaging to have someone of that level that's bragging about something like that.
Yeah, but the reality is, like, in today's day, in today's society, people are kind of like, they're like, oh yeah, they're all happy about it, you know, they're all happy about it, and it is what it is, you know. I'm pretty sure.
Did you watch that press conference in Dallas?
Yeah, I did. I'm a huge fan of Daniel Cormier, you know, I'm a huge fan. I think he's going to come out victorious in the rematch. He's a super hard worker guy, and he's always has his mind straight, and I don't know, for some reason I think that if Jon Jones does coke like that and parties like that, I think it's eventually going to catch up to him. Maybe not anytime soon, but a little bit later. And I don't know if you guys remember his performance against OSP.
Yeah.
You know, I see a decrease in the performance compared to the Jon Jones we've seen before. But then again, he talks openly about cocaine, and he got popped with USADA for a couple other things too. So I think there's a lot more to Jon Jones that we don't know about, and seeing kind of these kind of waves and in performances and in a public, the way he talks about serious drugs. I think we're gonna see some more waves like that from Jon Jones, but that's why I kind of like gravitate towards DC. He's a real champion and hard worker, and I want to be like Daniel Cormier.
Do you feel, and this will be our last question to wrap up on, even if Jones has moved on from all that, is not on any kind of drugs, that just the layoff he's had, do you feel that even the God-given gifts he has, that will deteriorate with inactivity? I mean, these are his prime years that I think at the end of his career, everyone will look back on at this period, and there will be a lot of what-ifs asked.
100%. I think it doesn't matter who you are, Jon Jones or Michael Jordan, or like, doesn't matter who you are as a human. If you keep doing drugs, you're going a different way. You know, you're going downhill, not uphill. You know, maybe it feels cool at the time, but I don't know. Me personally, I see a decrease in his performance. You know, I don't think it's good for him. Hopefully, he can notice that himself too, and change everything. You know, and come back, you know, better and stronger. Maybe he can learn that and use that as example and as a lesson, and stop doing all those things. Hopefully he does, because Jon Jones is an incredibly talented fighter. But we'll see. You know, we've seen a lot of times when weird things been happening, especially closer to the fight. You know, everyone deals with nerves differently. You know, and I think that probably could be the case for him, dealing with his nerves too, even though he doesn't talk about it, but he does certain things that reflect on his fighting and performances. I don't know, we'll see. I hope he doesn't do those kind of things anymore. I hope he kind of strengthens everything out, and because I do like watching Jon Jones fight, and he was a great champion, and we'll see. Hopefully he can turn everything around.
So thank you to Misha Cirkunov. Once again, that card from Sweden is going down next Sunday, May the 28th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The main card will air on TSN 5 here in Canada, FS1 in the States. All right, and we will have part 2 of that next week, where he's going to go over the contract issues he had coming out of the Nikita Krylov fight, Anthony Johnson's retirement, and more with Misha Cirkunov next week. I want to thank both Misha Cirkunov and Cody Saftic for joining us. We'll be back next week. We'll chat about the fallout of Bellator 179 that's going down Friday from London, England, and then getting set for the UFC's return to Sweden next weekend. That is it for us. Thank you for listening. You can subscribe to the MMA Report with John Pollock on iTunes. You can leave us a review. We prefer 5 stars. That would be wonderful. And you can follow me on Twitter at I am John Pollock. Have a great weekend. We'll speak with you next Thursday.